Yo guys, what's going on? It's the Tominator, and today we got a fun one in store because we're going to be talking about who's got the best body parts for each and every muscle group among all the Olympia contenders. This has been a long requested video. I can't even count the number of times people have asked me over the years to do a top 10 backs or a top 10 biceps or whatever, and while this isn't exactly the same thing because we're not doing a countdown, it's still pretty close and I think you should find it interesting. Another thing that needs to be emphasized before we dive into it, though, is that this isn't about the all-time best, okay? We're only talking about active bodybuilders who've competed in the past year. So I don't want to hear Tom Platz for quads, or Arnold for pecs, or Dorian for calves. None of that shit, guys. Even Kai Green is ruled out because he hasn't entered a contest since 2016. And the reasoning behind this is that I want to keep this list relevant and up to date with the latest bodybuilders because it's easier to compare and a little different from most of the other videos out there. Okay, so now that we all understand the rules, let's get into it. And just like building a house, we're going to start from the ground and work our way up. So first up is calves. This one was tough because I don't know if you noticed, but not a lot of present day bodybuilders have a great set of calves anymore. Though I was definitely impressed with the likes of John De La Rosa in his recent Toronto Pro win. Steve Kuklo was another consideration. But then I remembered there's this guy named Flex Lewis. Now, in general, we're only looking at open class competitors here. You pretty much have to for the sake of mass. But recall that Lewis has formally retired from 212 and is moving up to the men's open. So it's a bit of a loophole there. I'm not sure if he'll be jumping straight into it at the 2019 Olympia or if he's going to take some time off to make some solid gains. So we might kind of be bending the rules here, but regardless, Lewis's calves are just way too good to ignore, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity. I mean, the insertions are so low, and that gastrocnemius is so big, I'm pretty sure that when the calves get to be this size, we should just start referring to them as full-blown cows. Those things are grown, man. He's easily the best for this particular feature in the modern-day ranks. Okay, moving upwards, let's talk about the quads. Probably the most important part of the lower body as far as the judging process is concerned. This was another tough decision because so many guys have really good quads these days. Who do you go with? Rodin, Bonac, Phil, Rulli, the whole top four all have massively developed quads. Big Ramy probably jumps to mind for a lot of you considering he's got the biggest thighs on the planet. The problem for Ramy, though, is that he typically lacks separation, and if anything, the quads are too big and sort of overwhelm the rest of his physique. Rafael Brandao presents the opposite problem. His quads are sliced from knee to hip, and they've got great shape in outer sweep, but at this point in the young Brazilian's career, they simply lack the necessary size to hang with the big boys. So this leaves me with something of an underdog pick here, and this may prove to be controversial, but I'm going with Akeem Williams. His quadriceps are thick and feathered, and the closest approximation we probably have right now to a Kai Green, who would have taken this body part by a landslide had he stepped on stage recently. The big caveat with Akeem's wheels, however, is that his conditioning tends to fluctuate from show to show, and he's got fairly thick skin, so if he doesn't nail it, the cuts are quick to fade. It also doesn't help that he often seems to relax his legs completely, causing them to lose all definition between poses. But for the purposes of this list, we're considering people at their realistic best, not their worst, so assuming Akeem is at least at 90%, there's no denying that his quads are top tier. They also look great from the side angle, with superb frontal sweep and all that fine etching running along the outer part of the quadriceps. So that is why Akeem takes this body part. But if we're talking about the side leg specifically, it's Sean Rodin all day. Truth be told, this was what impressed me most about his Olympia winning package. Not his abs or his aesthetics, but just how peeled and detailed his legs looked in those side shots. And granted, it's not all quad here because now we're involving the hamstrings and the glute ham tie-in and stuff like that. So let's put a bit of an asterisk on this one as it's not really an individual muscle group. I just had to point it out because nobody else's legs look better from the side. From the rear, though, we turn our attention now to the hams and glutes. First, let's talk about hamstrings, and this has to go to Phil Heath, unequivocally. Now, even though Phil hasn't competed so far in 2019, and he may not even enter the Olympia this year, he did compete less than a year ago at the 2018 Mr. Olympia, so he qualifies on that basis. But as for Phil's hamstrings, they've got the size, plus that coveted hanging look from the side, and they display more grooves than a vinyl record when tensed. Since about 2017 or so, he's done this little hamstring flex maneuver to really highlight that area, and they just come alive, and that's what seals the deal for me, since I've never seen another bodybuilder do this before. As for glutes, though, I think it's safe to say we got an epic showdown between the booty queens Nikki, Kim, and Cardi. Oh, wait, no silicone, you say? Right, my bad. Wrong list. Okay, well, if we're talking strictly muscle-wise, the best glutes award has got to go to one Michael Lockett, who is always very full and super shredded in this area. No homo. Is it still okay to say no homo, or is that considered offensive? I really don't care, guys. Everyone's too damn sensitive these days. But anyway, another front runner for this title is Lucas Osladil, who makes a point of presenting his massive ass like a bikini girl in every show he enters. And while it is indeed very large and striated, it's a little too over the top, kind of like Big Rami's quads, I guess you could say. William Bonac receives a strong honorable mention here as well. Moving on to the upper body, let's talk about abs, shall we? An increasingly rare sight among the current ranks. It's a sad testament to the state of modern bodybuilding that only a couple plausible candidates come to mind here, namely Sean Roden and Brandon Curry. If this was 10 years ago, I'd say Dexter Jackson in a heartbeat, but in the past year or two, his midsection has really gotten worse for wear. But as for those first two, I'd say Curry's waistline is actually more streamlined and his abs are probably more symmetrical. But while I do think Roden's abs are a bit overrated because he has some minor distension in the lower portion, he still takes the title for best midsection because his abs are so deeply cut and well defined. Brandon's abs sometimes lack separation down the middle, and his midsection doesn't show quite as much detail overall compared to Roden's, especially through the obliques. Juan Morel's another honorable mention, but truth be told, I didn't really consider him because he already takes this next body part, the chest. Morel's pecs are arguably the most impressive in the current field. The fullness, the shape, the thickness, he's got it all. Cedric McMillan was also considered for similar reasons, but at times, especially when standing relaxed, his pecs look a little droopy, so that's why he didn't quite take it. Big Rami gets a nod here as well because his chest is super wide and probably more massive than anyone else's, but it just doesn't have the same wow factor as Morel's to me, probably because his shoulders, lats, and arms are also so massive, so proportionately speaking, it just doesn't stand out as much. Brandon Curry gets the dub for lats. What separates him from the pack is that his lats not only look good from the rear, but also from the front. A lot of guys today have outstanding rear lat spreads and even back double bis, but their front lat spreads are pitiful. Curry's really able to open up in the front double and showcases an incredible taper in the front lat spread as well. Some honorable mentions here would be Cedric, Dexter, Rami, and Charles Griffin. William Bonac also has some extremely low, dense lats, but they look odd when seen from the front. Lower back we're going to skip because this one's primarily based on conditioning, plus nobody really consistently knocks it out of the park like, say, Dorian did back in the day. Most guys can sport a decent looking Christmas tree if they get dry enough, but I guess if I had to pick a winner based on recent events, you'd be hard-pressed to overcome the reigning Mr. Olympia Sean Roden. Okay, and next let's talk about the traps. For my money, this is Dexter Jackson's domain. Even in his advanced years, his traps are still some of the biggest and best developed out there. The thing that really sets Dexter apart in this area is his ability to flare the traps, so they really pop out when he hits those crab most musculars. I'm not sure if everyone's able to do this. Certainly, you don't notice it as much in many other competitors. I was actually planning on making a video about this very topic at some point because over the years, I've learned how to do it myself. It's really just a matter of mind-muscle connection, not so different from flaring the lats or popping the pecs. So let me know if you'd want to see a tips video or something like that, but anyway, that's a discussion for another day. In any case, Dexter still has some of the best traps going. Roden and Rolly Winkler would probably be next in line. Shoulders, boulder shoulders, cannonball delts, who's got 'em? I was really racking my brain trying to decide on a winner here. The problem is that in today's bodybuilding world, where everyone is on copious amounts of anabolics, pretty much everybody has a great set of delts. Even the guys who are pec dominant typically still have huge shoulders. But the more I searched and really analyzed, the more I realized that nobody competing nowadays really has perfect delts. You gotta remember, unlike most body parts, the shoulders are visible in virtually every pose. So you need to consider how they look in the side chest and back double biceps, for instance, not just in front poses like the most muscular. The other complication is that many guys look absolutely amazing in the gym, but on stage they flatten out and don't appear that great anymore. I'm looking at you, Michael Lockett. I actually thought this guy was going to win based on his workout videos on Instagram because his shoulders are so capped and defined, and those rear delts are unbelievable. But then I went back and reviewed his contest pics and was rather disappointed. So this one is tough. You could easily give it to half a dozen guys. Phil, Rowley, Dexter, DeAsha, Lenardovitz, Kuklo. But at the end of the day, I'm going to cast my vote for Big Ramy. I know, it may not be his standout feature. That would be his quads, as we already established. But shit, I had to give the guy something. And make no mistake about it, those shoulders are absolutely massive. They're like beefy boulders jutting out from the tops of his arms. My only hesitation here is that the separation between all three heads isn't the sharpest, and that's readily apparent in this back double bicep shot. But like I said, no one really had the ideal set of delts, so we're going to have to go with a pair that are slightly flawed. In my opinion, Ramy's size and roundness makes up for it. The next body part should be no secret to anyone, because when it comes to the triceps, Rolly Winkler is definitely the alpha dog. Heck, these are probably the best triceps of all time, so you bet they're good enough for 2019. The thickness, the feathering, the long muscle bellies, and favorable attachment sites, you couldn't genetically engineer a better set of triceps if you tried. That's not to say he doesn't have competition. Phil Heath's are also elite, and Cedric McMillan is heavily underrated in the triceps department, but it's clear who comes out on top. Biceps was another closely contested battle. There's a lot of amazing biceps out there, and depending on personal preference, you could go with any number of guys on this one. But in my estimation, it's William Bonac. The peaks are just outrageous, especially as seen in the hands class most muscular and side chest. In the front double biceps and back double, I'm actually tempted to go with someone like a Victor Martinez or a Brandon Curry, perhaps, who have longer muscle bellies. But overall, when you look at the muscle in isolation, I believe Williams is more defined and looks the best from the most different angles. Even in the side triceps pose, the biceps stand out, for crying out loud. So to me, that's a clear indication he deserves this one. And finally, we come to forearms, the last major muscle group to discuss, and turns out we have a repeat winner in Phil Heath, who already laid claim to the best hamstrings. I was trying my best to avoid doubling up in this list, but if we're being perfectly honest, you could probably construct the ultimate bodybuilder just by drawing from 3 or 4 of the top guys. Between Phil, Rowley, and Bonac, that's about all you would need. But then again, we're trying to spread the love around and find somebody new for each individual muscle group. But in some cases, such as this one, there's no avoiding the inevitable. I mean, we're talking about the best brachioradialis the world has ever seen, and that's not an exaggeration. It looks like a second set of calves has been surgically implanted into his forearms. It's just like slabs of meat right there. Those things are ridiculous. So even though there's a couple other bodybuilders who likewise excel in this area, Dexter Jackson, Rolly Winkler, Luke Sando's forearms are underappreciated, and James Flex Lewis has got to be the runner-up. But Phil Heath takes the crown for best forearms. Frank McGrath also receives an honorable mention, but again, we're talking about bodybuilders who've actually competed in the past year, and I'm pretty sure McGrath doesn't fall into that camp. And finally, as a bonus, let's briefly talk structure, because the ideal insertions and fullest muscle bellies in the world doesn't mean a thing if you have a short and narrow frame to hang them on. In that regard, there's 2 main possibilities. First is Big Ramy. If you're going for mass, Ramy's skeletal structure is damn near perfect. He's wide as a barn door and relatively tall for a bodybuilder, with a decently tight waist for a man of his size. This is pretty much a mass monster's dream. However, if you want to go a leaner, more aesthetic route, you could certainly opt for somebody like Lionel Bayecki, who's basically like a modern-day Flex Wheeler with wider clavicles. Unfortunately, Bayecki is probably excluded because I don't believe he's competed in the last year, but I'm just sort of throwing it out there as food for thought. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the best body parts of 2019. Unfortunately, I do not have Photoshop, so I don't have the means to create a true Frankenstein from all these disparate muscle groups, so you'll just have to use your imagination. It's probably for the best anyway, as the result would almost certainly be horrifying unless allowances were made to bring things into proper balance. You simply can't expect that a collection of body parts from different individuals all thrown together would somehow flow well or look proportionate in the slightest. But anyway, thanks for watching and hope you enjoyed this one, because I definitely had fun making it. Let me know in the comments who your picks are for the best body parts of 2019. And as always, feel free to leave a like and subscribe for more bodybuilding content like this. Until next time, this has been the Tominator signing out, and I'll be back.